Hello, everybody. How is everybody doing? All right, so we should be live. All right, let's do the check-in, right? Yeah, it says we are live. Let's check volumes and stuff. Let's see if that is working. Give me just a second. And all right. Yep, volume is perfect. So well, I'm getting better at this. Now everything seems to be set just by clicking one button. All right, that's great. So let's start today's live, right? And we need a way for us to actually check questions, right? So let me actually log in here. Give me just a second. So it's going to be and there we go. And here we are. And there we go. Let's put that there. And that's it. We are great. Now I can actually see and check if you have any questions, if someone actually makes it to the live, right? I wish. All right, so let's start today's by actually reminding everybody what we're doing here. I have a new camera position. That is great. I think this thing is like too up my face. I think it's a little bit better, maybe. All right, hopefully everything sounds right. And maybe a little bit there. Now it's not on my face. All right, great. So, first of all, remember that we are going to be performing daily live. So this is the second day. There are still 26 days left until we start the course that we're going to be running. Remember, this is the Virtual Art Department, Digital Content Creation for ICBFX and Virtual Production that we developed with Pixamondo, right? And it is an actual course that the whole curriculum is developed by meetings and asking people who works in Pixamondo what do they wanted someone who was just starting at Pixamondo to know about Unreal Engine. So it's the full gathering of all that knowledge, right? And the thing is that now we are going to be running it. So for the past 2 years, we run it like 3 times internally with people from Pixamondo and Sony. And then we ran it 4 times with the Seneca Polytechnics. And now for the first time, we're going to be running it for the Vancouver Film School, right? So let's actually come here. And so I can actually show you. And all right, so here we are. This is what we're talking about. The virtual production, virtual art department, content creation. So it's a little bit shortened, the actual description. We thought that it was like a bit too long. But so you know, what this is about is us running a full digital content through the workflow, right? Through the digital life, right? The full work life of digital content from ideation, right? From the concept until you take it to the ICVFX wall, right? So that is what we're after. And it will take you to do that at the same time that you learn Unreal Engine. So that is great. While at the same time you're learning everything about, not everything, because we actually skip a couple of things that Pixamondo feels like it's not really necessary. So if I were to tell you what are the things that we're simply completely skipping, is mostly about character animation. We're not running anything about that. We can say that we have a full class for materials, but it's not to actually create materials. it is mostly for you to actually learn, actually how material instances work. And we're going to be actually working with the one that are provided by Fab, which are really good. There are pretty smart materials. So we're going to be learning how to use them, and we're going to be learning also how to, make them ours if we need to, right? So create our own versions and how to change them until we get something that it's good for us and our projects. And what else? Things like sounds and stuff like that, we simply don't go there. Anything about programming games and gaming frameworking, that's another thing that we simply don't cover. But what we do cover is, for example, we're going to start running you through what is, virtual production. And we're going to be running also photogrammetry. And we're going to be running into concepting. And all of these classes were actually made by a supervisor. There are classes that are 100% created by a supervisor inside Pixelmondo. For example, the photogrammetry class. In fact, I was like the first student actually to get the class. So I went there. They actually teach me everything about the class, and now I inherit it, right? And now I give it to you the same way that it was given to me. The same goes for concepting. So we're going to be learning concepting from me, but I actually learned concepting from a concept artist at Pixelmondo, right? So those are the great things about this course. There are a couple, mostly there are others. For example, we actually get to photogrammetry, and that's another one that I don't know if I already mentioned it. I think so. But yeah, there are a couple that were made in conjunction, right? So they actually, let's say that they came with what they wanted to teach, and I actually got it to a point where I pick it apart and realize if everything was covered and what other things could be added to it in terms of how I normally teach on Real Engine, and then I repack it as it was. So to actually follow the production life of a project, right, in the VAD team. So that is what we're going to be running. So we can say that the rest of the class were half made by Joe Rush and the Pixelmondo team, and with a collaboration, with me in terms of knowing that everything was covered and that it was in the right order, that there was nothing that you had the actual requirement to teach, but it was fully covered with and fully supported by everything that was learned before it, right? So I actually make sure that that was the case. And because we have run it, so many times right now, it is getting better and better every time. So yeah, this is exactly what we are promoting, right? These actual course. We're going to be running it again with the hosting of the Vancouver Film School. So everything in terms of the ingestion of students and the actual LMS and the communications, everything, and the certification actually runs through the Vancouver Film School. And we only provide, the teaching, the mentoring, and the VMs. VMs are actually in the price, which is great because normally you would think that your machine is good enough for virtual production, but you might realize that soon enough, that you're doing a good job with Unreal Engine when Unreal Engine starts failing, right? Because you're actually asking a lot of it. And that is simply how it goes. So you might want to have this secondary machine that is going to be a VM, is hosted in the northern, I think it's in Ontario. So I don't think it's going to be a big deal, if you're in the zone to actually get it. It's going to be virtually no lag. So you can actually use it. You're going to be able to work from it and actually present from it if needed, right? All right, great. So promotion is over. Let's actually do something cool. We're going to keep waiting if someone actually wants to join and ask questions. Like what I want to do in this space, this daily space, is simply, if you come here and you have any kind of doubt, something that you want to learn about Unreal Engine, or maybe you have an actual project that you need help with, right? And there is something that is not working right, or you have some particular kind of doubt about Unreal Engine, you can simply bring it here and I will do my best, right, to actually answer it. So yeah, I'm going to be here every night. I actually started 1 hour late today to see if I get, because it's weird, the actual time schedule that I have. I'm 2 hours ahead of New York, which is not bad, right? So if it is 9 o'clock here, it is 7 o'clock in New York, right? But if I go to the West Coast, then that number increases a lot. So instead of being, so if right now it is 9 o'clock, right there it is 8, 7, 6, 5, 4 o'clock, right? So it's still pretty early. People are still, at their work sites and might not be, I can see that there are plenty of people who are actually catching the recordings, which is nice. But I wish, if you can actually come and share, right? So that being said, let's actually do something cool. While we wait for someone to actually come, let's actually review my best estimates about what could we expect on Unreal Engine 5.6, right? So let's actually review this. For everybody who doesn't know, this is the actual Unreal Engine public roadmap. And the word public is really important because this is what they actually let us know. Not everything that they are working with, it's going to be here. I might want to disappear for this one so you can actually have like a good, complete view of this webpage. And also it is, there is a big disclaimer here at the start saying that these are, tentative plans and they are subject to change without any notice. So, all right, granted. Another thing that you might notice here is that up here, you have like all the different releases, right? 5.0, 5.1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? And these forward looking, right, is what they have planned for the future. But it has not been reviewed at any point. So you're going to find out that there are a couple of things here that are already implemented somewhere. Maybe, I don't know. I'm going to say that this has never been, reviewed in any chance, to actually take out things that are already implemented. In fact, you're going to see that some of these will say things like, and this was implemented in 5.5, right? So let's actually, we're not going through the whole thing, even though it's not that of a lengthy list of stuff, but there are a couple of things here that I think that are the most probable to actually be in 5.6. Some we already know, and because there are like in parallel of other stuff right here in this document, I think that we can actually expect those. So for example, in the rendering side, my guess is that almost everything here was already implemented. For example, I would say maybe it's still here because displacement for Nanite might not be in production already, even though there are actually shipping games with it. Like, for example, 1940 some, I don't know, the actual 1944, I think it is. It actually, it's shipped with nanite displacement for landscapes, of course. So these, we can actually say that these was completely implemented. The heterogeneous volumes, it's also shipped in that game because it's the first game that actually produces things like shadowing. This was implemented a long time ago, but it was not fully implemented in terms of the rendering. So you would have things like explosion, but no shadows out of those. It was horrible. Now you have actual shadows. So no, it was weird because you would have like self-shadowing. That was working, but that thing will not cast shadows onto anything else. So it was a weird implementation. So now it's fully implemented. Now, I don't know if it is out of experimental, if it is in fully production. I know that game, because in the Unreal Fest last year, it was actually, these was included into 5.5. Plus, it was showcased in the game. Path Tracer, again, this thing is fully in production. They already actually posted, so it's fully addressed. I think that both the adaptive sampling and the denoising, it's already there. I know that Path Tracer have these. It is not an important sampling; it's an adaptive sampling, which means that it's gonna fire like a preemptive, race into the scene, and the ones that it feels like there are the most important because of the amount of energy and the amount of bounces. It's gonna actually do the math and produce more samplings in those zones, right? So if it has like a very hot spot, it will actually produce more samplings in that particular one. Even if you are lighting with an actual image or something like that, not an actual physical source of light. So yeah, this is fully implemented. Maybe it's gonna get better, but as far as I know, this is fully implemented. The optimized shader cooking time, this is already implemented. Maybe it's gonna get better, but it's already there. Same as the render parallelization. This is something that was announced, already being implemented in 5.4. I know that in 5.5, it was fully implemented in 5.4 when they actually announced that Unreal Engine 5.4 was twice as fast as rendering as the original 5.0, right? It was announced like that. It was pronounced that it was, is it 50% or 100%? It's double the speed. So that was what was said. And the render parallelization was actually part of why it is so fast now, right? So this is already there. I know that these bindless resources is something that it is achieved. I don't know if it is fully achieved. What this means is that, all the different resources needs to be, categorized and sent into, compartments, right? And they're going to be like compartmentalized for the actual render. And that is not good, mostly because it was like an old way of actually doing the render. And it is as hard to process, as far as I know, don't quote me on these, a half-use bind or even an empty bind, right? Rather than a full bind. So it was actually quite hard to secure that all the binds will go, all the groups will be completely full, so 100% optimized. So they want it to be bindless. They don't want it to be compartmentalized. It want it to be, a different way. And I know that there are kind of making it work, and I'm sure that we can expect more of these as long as we get closer and closer to what is called the actual pre-base pass for shading, because in the first stages of the render, you produce what is called a base pass, and that is one of the initial and more important things about the render, because everything geometric is there. So it's the actual final result of Nanite, right? So Nanite will produce, the work of Nanite is actually to produce that base pass, right? So it will be in charge of only rendering what you see and not a bit more mostly, but that's it, right? So if something is behind something, you should not see it. It's not going to be loaded in terms of the geometry. Same, everything that is outside of the rendering view, and same things that are, very far down the line, right? That is what that base pass actually produced. But at that point, Unreal Engine doesn't have any clue of either the shader, material, or textures that is going to be into those triangles, right? So what they want with these bindless resourcing of all the textures and shading is to produce a bit of a pre-pass. So by that time, even though you might not have the fully shading triangle, you're going to have more information about what kind of shader goes in that triangle. So that is going to save tons of cycles because you might know things like, well, that particular triangle is translucent or transparent. So you not only need to get that triangle, but whatever is behind it, right? And at that point, you can very fastly iterate that thing. So you will know that that one and the one behind it and the one behind it. That is simply why Nanite is not great. And right now, the actual Unreal Engine rendering is not great to actually render things like trees, right? So Nanite is not great at decimating them. And the render is not great at producing iterations of translucencies, right? And transparencies. So very soon, we're going to have that shading pre-pass that is going to solve most of those issues. And we're going to have even faster render, if you can imagine that, right? At the same time, talking about that, it's not here, but I know that they're working on it. I don't know if this is by any means. I know that this is an actual, like an ant work. They keep on improving a little bit more every version. I don't know if there's going to be like a huge leap in terms of one version with this stuff. Once we get that, pre-pass shading, that is going to be huge. And that might come like in a big leap. But for now, I cannot assure that that is going to be in 5.6. What might improve in 5.6, because we know that they are working with things like the reflections. Now we're going to have hardware reflections, right? And they are going to be working the same as the actual, my bad. I was saying refractions, hardware refractions. Refractions was a thing that was not even mentioned for a long time. Simply because, from the time that actually, remember the times where we have the NVIDIA ray tracing inside the Unreal Engine? That works in 4 ways. So you would have the actual global illumination, right? Which was terrible to actually produce. It was very hard. It has like 2 ways of doing it, like the brute force and the other one, I can't remember which one. So brute force was very noisy and the other one was very blotchy. So it was horrible to actually work with. The noising was not that good. And you would have like a very hefty computer and video card to actually have something good with it. So let me actually appear maybe to actually comment all these. It's going to be a little bit more polite. And then it was occlusion. Oh, no, that is not it. Maybe is, guessing is this. Sorry about that. Let me see. Is it not? It is. All right. Hello, I'm back. So, so the other thing was occlusion. So we have global illumination with the original ray tracing from NVIDIA. We have occlusion, we had ray trace shadows, and we have ray trace refractions. And that thing was completely obliterated from the engine, like in 5.3, 5.4. And by that time, like refractions were like, all right, I don't know where I should be. I'm not even being addressed at this point. We know that we have click where you could actually, let me actually show you. If you go right now, to your project settings and you go to rendering and you go down here, you actually have a software solution for the high quality translucency reflections, right? But not for actual translucency, all right? So this was like the best thing that we had at the time. So it will know what was actually refractive and will actually apply a decent reflection. But the refraction was still, the best that Unreal Engine could actually produce. Refractions are really hard for Unreal Engine for many different reasons. mostly because of the fact that as Unreal Engine doesn't have that shader prepass, every time that when it gets to the point where it needs to assign the material, it will realize that it needs to get more information from whatever that triangle is and whatever is behind it. So it needs to go back and actually get from the base pass like a little bit more. And if it is recursive, then you're in a big trouble, right? And then is the actual issue from the sorting. The sorting is a big deal because if you have the same, self-refraction is very hard because at that point you don't know what comes first of what, right? Because normally Unreal Engine will get it from an actual position distance from the camera, right? But if it is the same, mesh, then it's really hard. Oh, there is someone here. Look at that. Hi, just landed here. Mostly work with Houdini. A few months ago, I tried bringing some scenes into the render in Unreal and got a bit disappointed with the flickering from Lumen. Does it works better nowadays? Well, it's not that it works better. It's that Lumen wants you to work differently. One of the things that Lumen produces is what is called, I can actually show you. It's going to be better if I can actually show you. So if you go show and you go advanced, and I can show the mesh distance fields, where they are. Mesh edges, I can actually search for it. Distance fields. There it is. So this is what Lumen actually uses to render. You would see that it's like a cheat. It is not actually using geometry. What you're seeing here is an actual image. And there are a few images here. So it is a 3D image. And right now it's being colored so you know when one starts and when the other one stops, right? And as you can see, it's a very poor representation of geometry, but is lighting fast to actually produce things like light bounces, right? And reflections. So this is what Unreal Engine actually uses in Lumen. So what this means is that you have like a certain amount of accuracy, right? And the easier the shape, the better, the production of that particular distance field. So if you have something that is like a column, it's perfect, right? You won't notice any kind of difference between the actual geometry and the actual, mesh distance representation. But when you start, getting things like a really, really small, you can see that these actually changes a lot. And I can actually jump with G to, the shaded view to this one. So this is a bunch of, tubes, right? But you can see how poorly, this thing is represented by the mesh distance field. And this is not that bad. Like what you can expect from these is that if you have like a very particular color that you need the actual global illumination to catch when bouncing the light, you might get a bit of an issue there. But the biggest issue will happen if you actually provide Unreal Engine with a very complex, close mesh or model. And that is because then the actual mesh distance field will produce something that is simply not good, not accurate at all. If you have concave or hollow, kind of meshes, the mesh distance field have a huge probability of actually creating something that is not good, right? And at that point is where you're going to get tons of flickering, tons of issues, parts where the actual scene is not being lit correctly, and many, many other things, right? Lumen is not completely worthless at that point. What is going to happen is it will revert to trying to do something that is going to be hard or harder to actually render. So it will try it best. So in the best of cases, it will be slow. And in the worst case, it will be flickering and not that good. Now, not only that might be the source of your flickering, but you also might get flickering like the one I'm seeing right now. And this is mostly, let me actually jump out of these and turn off G. So you can see that I can actually catch some flickering here. Let me run you through what is the best case scenario to actually remove, the little flickering that you can see right here. So this is mostly because of two things. It is sampling, right? So it is the difference between the amount of pixels and the amount of pixels that you're rendering, which means that sometimes the calculations will done here and other times it will done here. So what happened at that point is that if you have something that is contrasty, so something white or something black over something white, maybe it's going to be land on black and maybe it's going to land on white. And that is mainly what you're seeing here. You can see that these is the same tube, right? That comes down here, but here it's not that contrasty, so you don't get, the actual flickering. So there are a couple of things why this actually happens. Mostly is going to be the actual temporal anti-aliasing that right now it's called temporal super resolution, right? And you can actually get access to how that looks if you go up here in your hamburger, top left, soon to be changed in Unreal Engine 5.6 button right here. And if you go to your screen percentage, you're going to see that Unreal Engine, cleverly enough, is not rendering 100% of the pixels. It's actually doing blowout, right, of the actual number of pixels. So it actually, right now, the full extent of the viewport is this measurement here, 1982 by 1302, right? But it's actually rendering 68% of that. When I say rendering, is that the rendering calculations like light and nanite and lumen and all that is being calculated at a lower, resolution, and then the final pixel is being blown up, right, to the final, size of your viewport. So if you want to actually remove the possibility of these kind of things happening, you can do two things. You can actually come here and go to the screen percentage, and you can use, custom override, and you can set it to be 100% of the pixels. So right now, you can see that now it's kind of perfect here. Now it's not that good here. So these might come from something else. But this one, the actual anti-aliasing here on this tubing is perfect, right? So this might come from something else. So these might come from, if you actually check that out, now it's trying to render these size. Well, Lumen also will need the more initial pixels that you provide to the calculations of Lumen is going to run better. Your explanation was amazing. Can you tell me a bit more about your course? Oh, sure. Let me finish with this part because I think that I can also fix this one, so I can show you how. So the thing is that the more initial pixels that you provide Lumen is going to do a better job, right? And right now, even though my full display is 1440p, it might be not enough for Lumen to have like all the information that it needs to produce like a very clean. There is another trick, and that is that I'm not running these at fully cinematics in my scalability settings. I'm running everything at cinematic, but the global illumination. If I actually set my global illumination also to cinematic, I might actually reduce of kind of completely remove that flickering here. So because it improved, I can actually say that this was an actual Lumen issue, right? There are a couple of other controls that I don't want to, get too technical. But if you actually go to your post-processing volume, that was a huge, a huge mistake. Sorry about that. Let me see if I can go to the same place that I was before. Very, very fast. Here we are. All right. The actual quality control for Lumen, it's inside the post-processing volume. So you will need to actually go to the path tracing. Let me close everything. Collapse all categories. And we need to go to rendering features. No. Global illumination. Here it is. And if you go to the Lumen Global Illumination, Advanced, you get a few things that you can actually play here. So mostly how the actual post-processing volume works, at least on these particular curated set of command knobs and sliders that you can push, it's going to be well, guess I just expected everything to work. No. I mean, if you actually set up your scene a little bit more in chunks and not everything like monolithic, it might work a lot better. And without too much work, it will work. I remember that one of the first things that Pixamondo actually said when they started working with Unreal Engine was exactly the same as what is happening to you. They were trying to work Unreal Engine as if it was a normal DCC, and they very soon, realized that they would need someone to actually go through the thing with them and tell them, all right, no, in games it's not like that. You need to work more modular. You need to reuse a lot of all your assets, and you cannot work in a very monolithic kind of way, but in a very assetified workflow where everything is an asset that then can create several versions of itself in the shape of actors. Oh, you leave it. Oh, I wish you retake it. All right. So now that you're mentioning it, let's actually run through the actual course. I think it's still here. Let me see. All right, here it is. All right, so the actual course will start on the 2nd of June. It's a 12-week online program, only online, all right? So it's not presential at all, but it has more than 100 hours of content, right? And plus, apart from the actual classes, we're gonna have office hours, and you are asked to actually produce 2 different projects that by the end is going to be like one big project. So you're going to be asked to produce an interior scene with an access to an exterior, and then you're going to be producing the exterior, and then you're going to be meshing them both, and then you're going to produce like a final scene with both. So we're starting slow with things like there is something very particular about this course, and that is very driven to ICVFX, which means that you're going to have to compose at the same time as you world build. What that means is that when you're working in ICBFX, you're working with an actual LED panel, right? But that it's going to produce like a sandwich, right? A digital sandwich plus a physical sandwich. In the terms that from the sensor of the camera, then you're going to have the lens, then you're going to have a bit of prop, then you're going to have like an actor, right? And then you're going to have a bit of other props, right, that are right next to the actual LED. And then you're going to have the wall, right, the LED wall. And then inside the LED wall, you're also going to have, a bit of more layers to it, right? So you can have things, you're going to have a blending layer, right? Very near to the actual digital camera, the one that is inside Unreal Engine, that moves exactly as the one that is in the real life. And that is, where you're actually blending your scene with the real side of the stage, right? And then you're going to have like a middle ground where you want to have very good dynamisms, right? Things that move, things that are digital copies of what is in the real side of the stage. And you want to have tons of, oh my God, of parallax, right? You want to actually capture something that looks really 3D. So with just a minimum amount of camera movement, you're going to have tons of movement, right, in that digital background, right? Because you want to sell the illusion, right, that you are in a huge place. Well, you are actually in a huge place because those sound stages are really big, but not as big as the actual scene that you're capturing, right? Or as complex, or historically, or in space, or completely sci-fi. And you need to, you have the need to actually produce something like that. And then you're going to have a very far down the line, layer where mostly, if you are really optimal, it's going to be a picture, right? It's going to be a beautiful picture that you're going to be producing mostly inside Unreal Engine, and then you're going to capture it, and then you're going to be sending it to Digital Matte Painter, and he's going to be the best out of it, and then he's going to bring it back to you, and then you're going to bring it back into the engine, and you're going to remove all of those polygons and replace it by, a beautiful picture, right? That has highly dynamic range and that looks wonderful, and you can use it for a bit of the illumination of the scene, so everything will blend together with it. So that's why it's very important to have all of those concepts pretty early on, so you know from the start how you need to actually start producing your scene, right? Having that in mind, it's the best tool to actually produce something that is going to be really good at the end, to be actually be proud to actually be producing an LAD stage. And, it's all about producing. It's all about world building. It's all about using cameras, animating cameras. It's all about optimizing, a lot of optimization, lighting and rendering, and and actually learning how to produce an indoor scene and an outdoor scene, and then having the trouble of merging them both, and then show it to Pixamundo twice. So when you finish your interior, you're going to be showing it to a Pixamundo supervisor as well as it was a daily. And he's going to tell you what went right, what went wrong, how could you improve it, and you can ask them all the questions that you need. And then once you finish everything and you have both your scene into one big scene and you have it all ready, right, to be actually shown and be produced in an ICBFX stage, then you're going to have a second critique. When we normally, what we do is, for the first one, we bring someone from the actual VAD team, mostly someone that is very creative and good at actually creating the background content. And for the second round, we bring someone technical from the stage. And that one is going to actually be mindful of things like, these might be really hard to actually blend on the stage, and this is going to be something that is really good. You did a very good job at this and that. The parallax looks good. The clouds are not, good enough. You need to improve that. So that is great. Sounds like really interesting. And for some reason, subscribe to this channel. You really know your stuff. All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I hope that I know. Oh my God. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right. Check it out. I think it's a great opportunity. Many people are actually, worried that because it's just for ICVFX, like it might be too niche. But to tell you the truth, like this is like the pinnacle of Unreal Engine knowledge. Because the hardest thing that the actual engine will do is to actually produce very believable, something that you can match to someone standing in front of it, right? So it needs to be really realistic. It needs to be really well produced. It needs to look organic. It needs to look very, so it should not break the illusion, right? And at the same time, it needs to be real time. So it needs to look much better than a AAA game, and it should perform much better than a AAA game. So if you tell me that, you went through this thing and then you got a job at producing games, you're going to be the best at it. If you later on want to, use it to create off-render kind of virtual production, you're going to be the best at it, right? Because even when it's going to be an off-render and you don't care, that it's going to be real time, it's going to be fast enough. So you're going to be shaving seconds out of that render and everybody's going to be so happy about it.